Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So I was kind of digging around a little bit in my OCs folder on my Procreate. And since at the time I didn't really have that many OCs, I haven't really done any kind of drawing new outfits for my OCs type of videos like I did a few years ago. So I'm going to show you some of my old ones that I did, and I have videos on each of the individual versions for each of my OCs. So basically I want to design some outfits for my new OCs. But for today, we are going to be starting off with not Kaisen this time. We're going to be starting off with Moriko. So Moriko, or Rico, which is what I'm going to refer to her as her nickname for the rest of the video. I wanted to draw her first just because I've been drawing Kaisen a lot and I always enjoy drawing Kaisen, but I've also really been enjoying drawing Rico as well. And I keep a kind of like a board on Pinterest for all of my OCs, kind of like separately. And I like to collect photos of basically references for outfits that I think would fit them, or anything that relates to what I think their aesthetic is kind of based off of, roughly, like either based on personality or even like color palettes, clothing styles, anything like that, hairstyles even. So to start off, I wanted to draw Moriko in her, I guess like her current outfit, or the outfit that you would see her most in terms of how I would draw her on like a default state, basically. So I haven't drawn Moriko like all that much because she's still quite new and I just haven't been doing too many of my OCs on my iPad. But there are a few times that you've seen kind of like what her outfit is kind of comprised of. So she has more of like cool style or like streetwear style compared to the rest of my OCs. So for Masaki, he kind of has like more cozy, comfy, very simple. I feel like Sato leans towards more feminine, girly, usually long skirts or like bellowy pants with a more fitted top. And usually I will kind of like cater their aesthetics and their color palettes very particularly depending on the OC. So for Moriko, I tend to like picking a lot more either like earthier tones alongside with black. This tends to be where I like to choose her color palette a little bit more towards. And then for her outfit, I like dressing her up in like leather, so like biker jackets, kind of like combat, is it combat pants? I don't know what they're called. Cargo pants, I guess, could be closer to what I'm looking for. She has black painted nails. She wears a couple of rings on her fingers on both hands. She has no piercings that are kind of like on her default look, but you'll see in a few other ones that I'll give her earrings. So I feel like her ears are pierced. It's just like normally she doesn't wear like any kind of flashy jewelry for the most part in terms of like earrings. But I should have probably talked about the layout as well. So in my previous videos where I did these kind of sketch with me's and we kind of went through a little bit of picking and choosing and trying to determine their aesthetic and how they would style themselves into different outfits. So like I said, the main kind of first sketch that I wanted to do was her in her normal outfit. So we have kind of a crop top that's kind of more, how do I describe this color? It's like a light minty color, leaning a little bit closer to probably the green side. And then she has a kind of like a biker leather jacket. And like I said, the kind of cargo pants that are a little bit more high-waisted, just because I feel like that kind of aesthetic kind of suits her. Like I mentioned, it's like a little bit more streetwear. It's a little less like formal, if anything. It's definitely casual, still kind of feeling a little bit more dressed up in a sense. But as we're going through her outfits, and hopefully as I'm drawing her, I'm trying my best to fill up the space in a more interesting way in terms of like trying to fit at least 3 per page, and usually having some kind of at least waist up for each of them so that we can include more of their outfit into the kind of spread for both pages. Also, I'm going to be sketching the first page and then I'll sketch the second page, and then we'll move on to the coloring and then a little bit of cleanup for the first page, and then we'll move on to the coloring and a little bit of cleanup for the second page, just to keep the flipping back and forth to a minimum, because I am going to be using Page Assist, which you'll see shortly after I finish this little smaller, derpier doodle of her basically T-posing. But Page Assist on Procreate does record every time you flip between pages in the time lapse, so I tried my best to not switch back and forth too often, otherwise it would be very dizzying to kind of watch that at the very end. So hopefully after I finish these sketches, I don't end up flipping too much between the two different pages that we end up working on. So for her outfit, I did try my best to at least like look at the Pinterest boards that I had for Moriko for the most part, just because her style of clothing is definitely a little bit more out of my own comfort zone in terms of what I would wear. So I feel like I don't have a good amount of knowledge in terms of the aesthetic of her style, nor do I feel like I can properly comprise an outfit based on like what I've seen other people wear. So it's a little bit easier to find inspiration like visually of seeing like either people who already posted their outfits onto Pinterest and stuff, or just seeing like a general aesthetic definitely helps. So for the most part, I stuck her with a very consistent look for all of her outfits. I definitely think the one that I'm currently working on is a little bit different from the rest in terms of, I guess, like style and fitting for the most part, but I feel like it still fits her aesthetic quite well, just because I did find this outfit, I forget, I think it's like Blackpink's Lisa, which is what I was using the reference based off of, and it's kind of like a formal loose fitting kind of blazer dress shirt combo with kind of like dress pants or some kind of like formal wear. And I did like this, but I wanted her to be a lot more casual alongside with posing it in a certain way that I feel like she kind of like would mess around with clothes, if that makes sense. So like if I feel like Masaki wears a lot more baggier clothes, I like to make sure that it, like, you know, clothing feels baggy or anything like that. For Moriko, for this one in particular, even though it's like formal wear, I do feel like she's the type to push up or like roll up her sleeves to a certain extent so that it's a little bit more comfortable for her, because I did make her look a little bit more uncomfortable, but I don't feel like it's due to the outfit. Like, I feel like she would feel confident in this outfit, but maybe it's like the situation that she's in, meeting up with someone who's maybe of an authority figure or like someone of a higher status, and she needs to, you know, present her best self in front of them in a more professional manner. So I feel like that's the vibe of that particular sketch. Moving on, we are on our fifth sketch. So for this one, I did struggle with this one, and I feel like it's probably my second least favorite. Yeah, it's my second least favorite from the 6 sketches that we do today. The one that I don't like the most is probably the T-posing one. It's a little bit, I don't know, it just feels out of place, and I don't feel like I am in love with the outfit, and it's probably also just like how I posed her with the very much weird T-pose. So for this one, I wanted to go a lot more casual but less intense. So I decided to obviously put her in a little bit more, at least for me, I like the combination of like a little bit more fitted clothing for like an underneath or like undershirt or something like that for like the base, and then jackets, anything a little bit of a looser fit, I feel like kind of fits her vibe for the most part. It feels more comfortable but a lot confident in terms of like maybe some of my other OCs in terms of how they dress. And then for the last outfit, I kept it very simple, but I wanted to keep it a little bit silly. So when I was looking back at like some of my old versions of these like outfit, I don't know what you call these, like little mini wardrobes for them, and a lot of the doodles looked very derpy and very rough. So I feel like Moriko's is going to be a little bit out of place in terms of like the finish of it, but I feel like I also just draw and doodle a little bit differently than how I did before. So I sketch a little bit cleaner. I feel like they look a little bit less derpy for the most part, but I still wanted to include at least one kind of sillier one other than the T-posing one. So I gave her sunglasses. I do think like Moriko does have more of that playful, silly side as well. She's a little bit more carefree, likes adventure, that kind of type. So kind of moving along, we have our 2 pages done, and you can see that every time I make a new layer, a new page appears, but that's not exactly what I want. So I'm going ahead and rearranging my layers, then selecting 2 of them to group them so that each sketch is paired up with a blank layer. So that way we can color underneath my sketches without making new layers or pages with using Page Assist. So for Page Assist, I do feel like it's a little bit finicky at times. Like I said, the time-lapse portion usually gets a little bit weird because of all the back and forth, because it records the flipping. But also, layer management is a little bit different. As long as you keep everything within a group, it will be considered one page. So it's not too bad, but sometimes I do forget and it just causes me to have to rearrange my layers. But luckily for this, I only had 2 pages, so it's a little bit easier for me to manage. To fill in the character for Moriko's color and stuff, I decided to use the lasso tool, quickly go around and then color fill so that we can put down a base tone of her skin tone. And then after that, we can do some shading. I'll add the rest of the colors for, let's say, her hair, her eyes, her outfit. And then I'll do that for the remainder of the other sketches. And then we can move on to a little bit of rendering and cleanup. So in terms of like which ones were my most favorite from the 6 that I ended up drawing, I definitely think the one that I'm currently working on, like the one with her hair tied, is one of my favorites. I think she looks super cute, and I kind of like the slightly more sportier look on her. And I don't know, I feel like people who have short hair and they tie up their hair, it just looks so cute and pretty. So I definitely wanted to do that for Riko. After that, I decided to quickly color in her kind of like the base colors for her main outfit. That way I can kind of play off for at least trying to figure out what the color palette for her other outfits could be. Because I mentioned earlier that she's gonna wear a lot of black. She probably have like little pops of color, but I also associate her with kind of like a deep ether green or a little bit more of a muted green in terms of matching it to her color palette. She also has kind of like pale green eyes compared to Masaki. Or I guess like Masaki's winter or even like autumn aesthetic that I tend to give him color palette wise would probably fit Moriko as well, which I think kind of works out. I definitely have preferences in terms of when I pick color combinations for like my OCs or even like illustrations or drawings of whatever nature. I definitely have color palettes that I gravitate towards to kind of like automatically. So in the future, if I end up doing some other characters or I want to kind of fuss around with their color palettes or give them completely new color palettes for whatever reason, it's fun to just browse and peruse onto like, I don't know, like Pinterest and look for like specific color palettes, or even just like looking up different photos and seeing what color combinations kind of like speak to you and kind of extract those as a color palette for like future drawings or even like to create a character from, which I think is kind of fun. I definitely think in the future, hopefully soon, I will be designing Akemi's siblings, because I'm still kind of bouncing around the idea in my brain a little bit in terms of how I want to draw Akemi's sister. So I have a few aesthetics and kind of like visual ideas on how I want to draw her, but nothing's like too concrete. And I have a fun idea that I want to do for his older brother, which I think would be very, very fun to talk about once I can get to drawing him. I just don't want his aesthetic to overlap with Kaisen too much. So hopefully I can find a little bit of a workaround, because I was looking in my folder of my OC's like drawings and doodles and stuff on Procreate, and I found the old version of like what I initially wanted like Akemi's older brother's like look to look like. And he's kind of like a mixture of between Kaisen and Moriko in a sense, and I don't want him to be in that direction entirely. So I definitely think I can kind of push it to a different aesthetic and a little bit more of a fun difference, I guess. I don't know how to explain it without like spoiling it, but I think it would be kind of fun to do that maybe for a video as well once I can kind of flesh out his design, and same with the sister's design if I can get to that eventually. So we moved back to the second page for the little sketches of Riko's outfit, and you might have noticed that as I was coloring this one in, I did copy and paste a headshot from the previous page, and the reason being is that initially when I was doing the base colors for the second page, I saved a PNG version of the first page, and for some reason, I put it as a reference tool and I was color picking from it, but every color that I was picking from that and putting onto this particular layer, it just made everything look super dull and just like unsaturated. So I decided to, test it out and see if the colors were actually accurate by actually copying it from the first page and pasting it onto the second page to kind of color match, and there was a difference. So I decided to just color pick from the one that I copied and pasted, and that way I can kind of keep the colors quite consistent. But you guys can kind of let me know, do you guys ever just randomly draw your OCs in like a bunch of different outfits? Does your OCs tend to have like a specific look to them, or is there like clothing and wardrobe and just like overall aesthetic always changing? I'm always curious because I feel like majority of people who have OCs tend to draw them like over and over again in a very specific look. But maybe if you have a character that's in like a story, or I don't know, something that's a little bit less, I guess like it doesn't make sense for some kind of story based like comics and stuff, just because they probably would keep the similar like aesthetic all the time. But like slice of life, sometimes if it's based off of real life, they might have a bigger wardrobe, or at least seen in different clothing a little bit more often. So I'm always curious, like, do you guys have a specific default look for your OCs? Because I feel like that might be also an issue if you can't, I guess, like decide on a specific look for them and you want to make a reference sheet for them. It might be a little bit difficult. But for the most part, I had a lot of fun just drawing Riko for the majority of today in terms of this session. I don't know. I feel like her character in general is just something I wanted to draw for like a long time. And I feel like I was going to push Sato to be in this kind of personality type, I guess. I don't really want to box them into like a specific personality, but I feel like Sato and Moriko really get along super well, and they're a little bit similar in terms of their personality. But I definitely think Moriko's a little bit more like positive, and she's like more gung-ho about things, very easily excited, that kind of fiery personality where it's like go, go, go. Well, I feel like Sato's a little bit fiery in a different sense. She's a little bit more, I don't know, not impulsive. How to explain? Upfront, blunt, maybe? Kind of like will confront you type of person. Like I feel like she wouldn't let people bully her, that kind of, like she would stand her ground 100%. And I feel like Moriko would be similar in that sense, but she's a little bit more of that Genki kind of happier type, if anything, compared to Sato. But I don't know. I'm gonna play around with their dynamic a little bit because I just like having, the strong girls and, that kind of type of character for the most part. But I definitely think like when I design Akemi's sister, she's gonna be probably vastly different compared to these two in terms of personality, and aesthetic is still like kind of up in the air in terms of how I want her to be for the most part. Trying to think what else. I do apologize. This video, like in terms of the voiceover, is probably literally all over the place. I'm doing this recording a little bit last minute, and I'll probably talk about it a little bit more on Monday's video, as I am trying to squeeze this video in before like way before the Saturday when this is uploaded, just because I need to take my computer in and I am scared they are going to take it over the weekend and I'm not going to be able to access a lot of my files or programs. So I don't really want to miss an upload day. So I am squeezing this in, and it's right now 2 a.m. in the morning. So yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit delirious, and I feel like it's going to carry on to Monday's video, so I do apologize. But this is kind of the finished pages for Moriko's little outfits. So we have the first page with her main outfit, and then 2 other outfits on the side, and then we have 3 more on this last page, which I feel like the 2 larger ones are definitely my favorite, including the one with the ponytail. I think was probably my favorites out of the 2 little pages that I ended up doing for today. So yeah, I'll do the quick time lapse, and I think that's it. I don't think I do any other touch-ups on the little doodles for today, but hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me draw a few outfits for my OC Moriko, and hopefully you will see more of her soon. And I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!